Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Erik Johansson, a teacher with LSAT Demon. Joining me today, I'm thrilled to have LSAT Demon student Jimmy, who just crushed the LSAT and is now in the midst of his application cycle. Jimmy, congratulations on that excellent score. And also, thank you for your work as an Ask Button hero. I would love to maybe get into that a little bit. But yeah, thanks for coming on the pod.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a long-time listener. I think I started listening to this podcast before I truly started studying, and then it kind of like jump-started me to get on it and start studying. So yeah, I had some success on the September LSAT. I got a 174. After a little bit of a journey, it was my fourth attempt, and so yeah, happy to be here. Kind of feels surreal a little bit because I've listened to this so many times, and I was always kind of hoping I would be a success story someday, so it feels good. But thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, of course. Pleasure's mine. I can sympathize with that. I was a listener before I was working on the podcast as well, so it's like it all comes full circle.
It's a fun, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, you mentioned 4 attempts, so take us back to the beginning. Where did you start?
Yeah. So I don't recommend how I went about starting the whole LSAT process, but I was having a conversation with my wife, and we were kind of talking about our future, and law school had been something I'd been wanting to do and to attempt, but I just knew nothing about necessarily like the LSAT process. And so after that, our conversation we had, I went in to my office, I signed up for the June LSAT. This was back in like November of 2023. I signed up for the June LSAT, and I was like, I'm taking it in June. And then I kind of let it sit for a couple months, didn't touch it. And then my dad actually gifted my dad's an attorney, and my grandpa's attorney. So I've had attorneys in my family. So I've understood the job and not necessarily the application process. Mm-hmm. But he bought me an LSAT book for Christmas. It was gifted to me. I was like, oh, I think, is it time to start studying?
Yeah, hint, time to get to work.
Right. And so I knew I wanted to look at classes for the LSAT, and I had a buddy at my gym in Atlanta that had been studying with the LSAT team. He's like, don't bother with these other companies. Like, try out LSAT team. I think you're going to like it. You're going to like their style. And so I took my diagnostic. I got a 154. This was in January, I believe. I forget the test number that it was like 72, but all the test numbers are so different now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I took that, and I was actually like, I was disappointed, and I look back and there was no reason to be disappointed. I remember I was like 154. Is an excellent
diagnostic.
I had been Googling like scores that are needed to get into the law schools I wanted to go to, and I was like, there's no chance. Like, they're all saying you don't really improve all that much in the LSAT. And so I was kind of disappointed, but then I was listening to one, I forget if it was the weekly or the daily podcast episode, but Nathan was talking about someone's diagnostic, and I think it was a 154 as well, and he was like, no, I expect you to get into the 170s. And that was kind of like the first time I believed. I was like, okay, like I can do this. And so then it started the journey, but still I still wasn't listening to Ben and Nathan's advice. I still had that June LSAT on my timeline. And so I kept that on there, tried to prep for that, and then I made it even worse. I signed up for the April LSAT because I was so dead set on the games, because I had gotten good at the games. So I was like, I need to do as many tests as I can with the logic games before they're gone. And I definitely was not ready for April. So I took it April, June, August, and September, and I went 164, 165, 167, and then the 174 in September.
So you gradual progression of scores up, and then really a jump on the 174. Can you think of anything that really like did that jump match what you were seeing in your practice test scores, or was it just a matter of like you had kind of scored low on previous ones and then you scored high? Yeah,
it was more the latter of just really, I mean, the 164 in April was kind of on par. I shouldn't have taken it then. I was scoring in the mid 160s, and at that point my goal had become 170, so I just shouldn't have taken the April. But once June did roll around, I did have a 173 on a practice test, and so I was feeling good, like, and I just, it was the games actually for both April and June that ended up derailing me. My first section on April's was logic games, and so when I saw it, I was like, oh great, start off on a good note, like let's kill the games. And then I bombed the last game. I did struggle to recover on that test. I mean, obviously like 164 is not a score to hang your head on. And like, I was able to have a decent test after that, but I just knew that I kind of messed that up. And same thing with June. The last section was the games, and the last game I did it again. So I was so disappointed because at that point I'm like, the games was the reason I was getting such high scores, or a big reason, because I was able to get perfect every now and then. So when I found out they were going away, I was just like, I don't know if I'm able to make it happen again in August and September, but just kept getting after it. It probably directed my studying a little bit better for reading comprehension. It's always the one that no one wants to study as much. Yeah. So August with a 167, I don't really know what happened there because I didn't feel horrible about it. I think it was probably the reading comp got me because it was a hard section, but like I try, like I don't know, it just didn't go well. It's just probably the bottom of my variance, and that's what I kind of kept the faith with. It was like, I know my variance, and I keep hearing this, like, yeah, you're gonna maybe score at the bottom of your variance sometimes, but you can also score at the top of your variance, and so that's when September rolled around. So it felt good.
Nice, yeah. With both with both the logic games and with RC, and you call those out as the two sections that kind of seem to make or break your score in different settings. It's true that like on logical reasoning, you've just got 25, 27, however many it is, questions. And if you bomb one, well, that's 1 point gone. Right. But with the games or with RC, if you struggle to connect to a certain passage, well, that's a quarter of the section. Yeah. So I remember that experience on my first official attempt on a logic game back in 2021, a game 4, where I was in the middle of it and I was like, I am totally lost. And it was this defeated feeling that sets down on you in the middle of the test. And maybe it's either easier to reset in LR if you just know, okay, well, I leave that question behind me. But probably in RC, there's a similar thing. If you're in the middle of a passage and you're just like, I am totally lost. Like these 6 to 8 questions, this could be tough. So it sounds like you've experienced that as well. Was that something that you had to work on after June to figure out? Like, do you remember overcoming that kind of thing on particular RC passages?
Yeah, it was definitely a matter of I was just going too fast. And, you know, when I was able to step back and realize, like, by me going fast through this passage, I'm then having to go back and reread this passage again, half the, like big sections of it to understand these questions or what's the tone of the passage and things like that. And so it was realizing how it is similar to the games of like spend the majority of your time on that game, and then on, like, when talking about RC, spend the majority of your time on that passage, and the questions just become a million times easier because you're like, okay, like there's probably still gonna be a couple where you need to like reference something, like let me go check this real quick, but I know exactly where this is in the passage and where they kind of talked about this. But it's definitely just gives you so much more confidence going through the questions, and then speeds you up even though you feel like you're going slower. So that was the big selling point for RC for me.
Yeah, so you're rereading less, or if you are rereading, it's when you're reading it the first time, not minutes later when you're struggling on a question. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. You mentioned that you wouldn't recommend the way that you began your and maybe scheduled your LSAT prep. Talk a little bit more about that and what you would have done differently. I
definitely, I would have taken Ben and Nathan's advice of just like, until you see your scores where you want them to be, then sign up. Like I just got lucky that once June rolled around, my scores were where I wanted them to be. But for April they weren't. And so I just should have never have taken that test. I was just like, in my mind, I was like, oh, I never go perfect on reading comp or LR. So I need to take it when there's a section that I do go perfect that's going away, talking about the games. So it just kind of doing that, like what I did, just kind of has that, like, you see that it's just like the scary monster at the end of it. It's like, I need to, oh shoot, we're 2 months out and I'm not, PTing where I want to be right now. And so there's just no need to put that pressure on you, because I could not even have taken it in June and I still would have had my score that I have now, I like to believe. So like I didn't have to just start taken it as soon as possible. Some of it was kind of some ignorance with the whole like law school application process and timelines like that. But yeah, I was like, oh, I'll just put it out there and I'll be ready for it when it comes. And there's just puts an unneeded pressure on it for sure.
Yeah. There's a lot that we don't know about the process, both for the LSAT and then also for applications. It's just a ton that is opaque for those of us getting started. Even you, who you mentioned you have attorneys in the family. Yeah,
because it's different even now. Like the whole, like,
sure.
Even the LSAT in general looks different than like when my dad took it. Yeah.
Do you compare? Have you spoken to your dad about the LSAT? And is he like, oh, this is not what I remember it?
He does not remember his scores, but I would go over questions with him, and I would have him and my brother. I'd be like, hey, here, let's do this LR question together, and I'm sure everyone was ready for me to be done talking about the LSAT for a little bit because it did become most of my life since January. I think in a good way. Like I just genuinely enjoyed it, but yeah, I would test him on some questions every now and then, and that was fun to do.
Did you enjoy it from the beginning, or did you have to learn to enjoy it?
I think once I started seeing a little bit of progress is when I started enjoying it, and it was when I started believing in myself for it. Then it was like, all right, let's do this. Like I'm like, this is something I can conquer. Because honestly, going into it, I was a little nervous because I've never really like viewed myself as like a reader, and just like I was always like a math and science guy, and I was a finance major in college, and so I kind of stayed away from reading. But honestly, the LSAT, like I'm reading books again. The LSAT like got me like liking reading again, and it made me believe that I was a good reader. I think I was just like being negative on myself and saying like, oh, I'm a math and science guy, I can't be this. So I genuinely enjoyed it. My favorite section was definitely LR though. It was like little games every question, and I would just drill. Like if I was just like waiting for something, I would just pull up the app and do a couple. I would do a couple before bed. Like if I was just like laying in bed, do a couple LR questions, and my wife would always give me a hard time about that. She's like, you don't need to do any more today. You're good. But I genuinely did enjoy drilling, especially LR.
Totally. I'm sure that your math and science background helped you though. Like, did you see, I know it is a test of reading comp, and maybe you felt, oh, I'm not a reader, or that's how you have labeled yourself, and you thought that would hurt you. But where did you see your science background actually helping you on the test?
It was definitely the games first, and that's why I was like so in love with the games, because I'm like, this almost feels like a word problem in a way to figure this out. But then when you start seeing the similarities of breaking down an LR passage and you know the specific question types and what they're looking for, and you know just taking your time on the argument, breaking it down. And the big thing for me, it was a reason I always kind of stay away from it, because I always liked when something was like 100% right. And that's what I liked about math and science. I'm like, this answer is 100% right, and I can prove it. And I always viewed, you know, like reading and reading comprehension, like, well, it's all kind of arbitrary. It's like there's a good answer and then there's a little bit better of an answer. But with the LSAT, what I learned and what I loved about it was like what you guys say, like there's one right answer and there are 4 completely wrong answers. And that's what I really enjoyed about it, because it was frustrating when you get one wrong, because then you're like, why did I think that wrong answer was wrong? Like that, like, what did I misinterpret here? It wasn't just like it was a little bit right. No, it was wrong. So yeah.
It's a really useful thing to have in mind when you review. Just the default assumption that the test is perfect, the test is correct. And
right.
Just to be able to say, if the mistake here was my own, it was not a matter of interpretation. The mistake here was my own. If you can just embrace that and accept that,
yeah,
then it makes it easier to get to an understanding of the correct answer, in my experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree with that. It gives you confidence in it. You're like, if I'm doubting this right now, if I'm doubting this answer choice, odds are this thing's not right. Like, if it doesn't feel right, let's find one that feels really right. Like, I'm not going to give these answer choices more credit than they deserve.
You were an ask button hero for a while, and I'm sure you encountered, as I have, angry ask button messages from students insisting that the test was wrong, insisting that one question was wrong.
Yeah.
How would you go about responding to a message like that?
Yeah, that's where being an Ask Button Hero was what it kind of was a game changer for me in my studies, because I started that in June. I think that's when I started understanding LR and RC more. But yeah, with that, I would always just put myself in their shoes. I'm like, what's making them think this? And a lot of it would be how I would go about is I would honestly start with the right answer. I'm like, I want to, like, this is the right answer, and this is why that's right. And we're not going to give, like, basically what I just said is we're making jumps and leaps to make these wrong choices correct. And the answer choice we have to do the least amount of jumps and the smallest leap for, that's going to be your right answer. And so that was always what I would kind of try and instill on them. Like, with it, that's a big jump we're trying to make that wrong answer choice correct.
Totally.
So the smallest leap, I think I probably typed smallest leap like 200 times as an Ask Button Hero answering students. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a great way of putting it. And that's true for both LR and RC.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It holds absolutely true for both.
Do you you loved LR, you drill LR and just free time.
Yeah.
Is that still your favorite, or do you like RC as well?
I definitely I liked the challenge of RC because it was just from the start. I think on my diagnostic, maybe games on my diagnostic was my lowest, but like quickly after that, once you figure out how to work some games, RC was my worst. So I enjoyed the challenge of it, of just like, okay, I'm someone who likes to do stuff fast, and I was a skim reader, and I'm like, I literally cannot do that on this, or I will always struggle on RC. So I did have a love for it. By the end of it, I really dedicated those last couple months of studying towards RCs. I'm like, all right, I understand LR. I'm doing well at it. I know the techniques that I need to do. I have good form on the test during this, but my RC, it was all over the place. Like, sometimes I would do really well and I would, take my time and I'd be predicting answers. And sometimes I'd be like, this passage makes no sense. Let's just see if I can find something in the question. And then, that always goes poorly. So LR was still definitely my favorite by the end, because it was one that clicked with me the most, made the most sense. But I definitely gained a appreciation and respect for RC, and it got me into reading, like I said. So yeah.
Nice. What kind of stuff do you like to read now?
I've been like polling friends, because I'm like, it's been so long since I've been reading, but I'm reading a book called Project Hail Mary right now. It's by the same guy who wrote The Martian, which I've never read The Martian, but I love the book, or I love the movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a fiction right now is what I'm reading.
Andy Weir, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I haven't read his stuff, but I agree. I really liked that movie.
Yeah. Apparently the Martian book is like fantastic, but yeah, I haven't said, just because I know the story, I was like, I'll read this one first.
Sure. Cool. What's next for you?
Yeah. So like you said, I'm in the middle of applications right now. And now I'm just like trying to stay patient, because I think I have sent in my last application, for good. And now it's just like the waiting game. I think I have to practice the LSAT form of like being patient, and there's nothing I can do right now. And it's kind of a weird feeling, because when you start prepping for law school, it's so far out, but there's so much in that first like 25% of like getting to law school, of like, studying for the LSAT, taking the LSAT, applying to law school. And now I've kind of got this period up until basically August. There's not really much more for me to do other than like wait for offers of admission to come in, scholarship offers, and then make a decision.
Yeah.
So
it is grueling in its own way, waiting for those decisions to come in, and it can make you feel a lot of weird things about yourself as you're waiting.
Yeah.
Do they like me? Don't they like me?
Yeah.
But
all these status checkers, I'm like, I'm not even looking at them. I'm like, I'm sure they'll send me an email.
Yes, that is correct. I would encourage you to not check statuses, because I did that the first time I applied, and just constantly hit that refresh. And I checked it I know I checked it 2 hours ago, but let me check it again, see if anything has updated.
Yeah.
Oh, it updated. Now it's gone from received to in review.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What does that mean for me?
Right. Reddit just goes crazy with it. I've tried not to check the Reddit pages on it. It's definitely, it's going to take a lot of patience.
Yeah. Hang in there. Before you know it, you'll be getting those offers, and then it'll be your own decision for where to go.
Right.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Jimmy. It's been a pleasure having you on and getting to chat with you. Any final words of advice for listeners and students?
I'll say what I said for my departing demon tips, and Ben and Nathan, it was actually on the Thinking LSAT podcast a couple weeks ago. But basically, just like, you're going to hate slowing down. You're going to hate, not finishing sections, but it is the only way to do the LSAT, because you will miss, important points. You'll miss literally words that were important in passages by going fast, and speed will come with predicting and understanding the passage. And once you understand the passage and you can predict, then the test just kind of starts flying by, makes it a lot easier. Like, I actually didn't finish my RC section on the 174 because I just didn't make it. But I took my time on the fourth passage. I got through 2-ish questions, maybe a third, and then guessed on the last couple, and it worked out, and I'm happy about it. And that was kind of where I wanted to be, because every time I finished an RC, I was like, I may have cooked through this a little too quick.
Sure.
But yeah, so slow down. It's going to be the best thing you could do, and listen to Ben and Nathan. Pretty much everything. I would say everything. There was things I didn't, and then, like I said, I regretted the things I did not listen to, because it probably would have made the process a little smoother for me. But yeah, thankful for the Demon. I'm glad that it was the first software or teaching service that I've found for the LSAT. So yeah, thankful for Ben and Nathan, the team. It's been great.
Awesome. Thanks, Jimmy. Well done on that 174, and best of luck with your applications. Let us know how it goes.
Appreciate it.
Email daily@lsatdemon.com if you'd like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.